tous et bienvenue à l'Alliance française de Kandy en ligne. Hello everyone and welcome to Alliance de Française de Kandy online. For those of you who do not know us, Alliance Française de Kandy is a certified French language school in the hill capital of Kandy in Sri Lanka. We offer French language classes to students of all ages and backgrounds, from primary school children to advanced teacher training, French official certifications, and French conversation. Alliance Française de Kandy plays an active role in the network of French alliances in Sri Lanka and the Maldives, which includes AF Colombo, AF Matara Ngale, AF Jaffna, and AF Malé. All French alliances are directly linked to the French Alliance Foundation in Paris and have close ties with the French Embassy in Sri Lanka. As you're witnessing today with this event, the particularity of French alliances around the world is to be able to be more than language schools and to offer meaningful cultural events in relation to the local, international, and Francophone contexts. Today's event celebrates the World Environment Day. We planned it a while ago. It was relevant then, and sadly, it is even more relevant and meaningful today, as we are holding our breath on the possible oil spill from a sunken container ship off the western coast of Sri Lanka. With fishing activities put on hold, it is very clear how livelihoods are and have always been tied to the environment. So today, we are very pleased to welcome our two guest speakers from both Kandy, both passionate environmentalists, relentlessly conducting awareness sessions amongst the public. Chathurika Senanayake, who is the founder of Green Team Sri Lanka, who is actually a former student and teacher at Alliance Française de Kandy. And Dinithi Iddawela, who is an architect and professor at IE University, Architecture and Design Department in Madrid, in Spain, who's actually in Spain today, and founder of the Clean River Project. This group has conducted many river cleanups along the banks of the Mahaweli River. And what I can say is that both speakers believe in the power of education. They have built their life around it, and we are proud to give them the floor to challenge us into being aware and practical.
Thank you so much. What a great introduction. Thank you. Okay, so just to tell everyone, as I said to Evangeline and Sarah before, this presentation, we are embedding a couple of French examples, just specifically because we are catering to the French language school in Kandy. But I won't be speaking in French. My knowledge of French is close to zero. Chathurika, on the other hand, here is a total pro. Anyway, okay, having said that, let's get started. I will share my screen. All right. Can you see? Great.
Yes.
I'd like to start with this quote by Dalai Lama. We are the only species with the power to destroy the earth and also the capacity to protect it. It's very powerful and pretty self-explanatory. As Sarah mentioned, through Clean River Project, we have done, the project we started to create awareness on the issue of pollution in Sri Lanka, because we have a big issue of pollution, generally in our Southeast Asian region. Through Clean River Project, we have conducted multiple river cleanups and multiple awareness sessions such as this one to various groups like local community members and school children and various other groups. The river cleanups we conduct in collaboration with the Kandy Municipal Council branch in Aruppala, because that's where I'm from. They have been immensely supportive. So what they do is they provide us with the bags, we do the cleanup, we fill the bags, and then we give it back to them, and they take responsibility in the disposal of it. They also recycle whatever that is recyclable amongst those items that we take from the river. just to give you an idea, within 1 hour, we are able to collect between 15 to 20 large bags of trash easily. And that kind of gives you a scale of how much trash flows down the river. You can see in these pictures, Alliance Francaise joined us in one of the cleanups, so I've embedded those here. In the stuff we collect, there's the most obvious items like polythene bags and wrappers and plastic, but also some of the more disturbing things like dirty diapers, female sanitary pads and condoms and all sorts of things. And also some of the large unexpected items like refrigerators and broken old computers and parts of furniture. So I mean, before I started this project, I knew the river was dirty, but I did not understand the scale of devastation until we got into the river and started cleaning. So it's quite mind-numbing to honestly see how polluted our waterways are. Now, we know that water is life, and all the rivers and streams that carry this water through the earth are like the veins of the earth. They give life to all the ecosystems and species that depend on it, right? Including ourselves. It's beautifully said here by Jacques Cousteau that the cycle of water and the cycle of life are one. And yet, this is how we treat our rivers. This is Kalini Ganga in Sri Lanka, and the pollution, and some other examples from other countries. This is Ganga River in India and surrounding canals. This is Indonesia, Citarum River, often known as the world's dirtiest river. The Ganga in India and the Citarum in Indonesia tend to compete for this not so glorious title. But this is the sad situation, right? We see too often that compared to some parts of the world, especially compared to the western part of the world, especially in Sri Lanka, people are more careless about dumping things, irresponsibly disposing. So why do we have this problem? Do you think that people don't care? Do you think that it's a lack of awareness? Or is it a cultural problem, right? I don't think there is a black and white answer to this question. But I do think, specifically from my encounters and my conversations with people, that I have, and through the work that we do, I have come to realize it's more of a lack of awareness than lack of care or anything else. And the reason I say that is people tend to think that when they throw something away and it's out of their sight, somehow the problem is sorted. And what I want to show you through this presentation is the story of trash after we throw it away, that the journey that we no longer see. So when you throw something away, it never stays in the same place. It moves with the elements, with the wind, with the rain, and floods sometimes displace mass quantities of objects. So oftentimes they tend to find their way into flowing water, drains or small streams that eventually end up in the river, right? They lead to rivers. And where do rivers go to? The ocean. What happens in the ocean? These objects tend to move with the water currents, and they tend to collect in the ocean. And now this is in the habitat of marine wildlife. And a sea turtle, for example, sea turtles eat jellyfish. So a sea turtle can't tell the difference between a jellyfish and a floating polythene bag. So they consume the polythene bag. And same with the whales. They see these floating objects and think it's food and consume vast quantities of objects. Birds that live on the marine ecosystem think that the floating pieces of trash are food and come and give it to their chicks on land. And another thing is that when these things float about, they don't stay the same forever. They break down. And breaking down is not in the same way that a banana peel breaks down. It doesn't decompose organically. It just breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces. And this is called microplastics. It's still plastic. There's no change in composition. And now, all of a sudden, this is reaching all the different levels of the food chain, from the smallest fish and shrimp to the larger mammals, right? And eventually we consume fish, and eventually this finds its way back to us. So the trash that we throw away finds its way back into our systems. And recent studies have shown that there's plastic in our bodies as well. So as a society, we are no longer healthy. This is an image of plastics breaking down. You can see that you can't even identify what these objects what these pieces came from. They're just smaller and smaller pieces of plastic. Some smaller microplastics are as small as a grain of sand. So let's take a look at a couple of the items that are commonly thrown about. For example, here you can see a plastic bag lasts for 10 to 20 years to decompose. Diaper, 450 years. And bottle, 450 years. I mean, if you put that into context, think about it. If we throw a plastic bottle today, that means we will live and die, and our children will live and die. Their children will live and die, and even their children may live and die. And either this plastic bottle will either be there still in part or whole. So think about that in context. It's quite crazy if you think about it. This is a map of the world with all its rivers and streams reaching the ocean. All of these little red and blue dots around country borders are where the rivers and dots reach the ocean. And the red circles indicate the most polluted waterways in the world. You can see there that Southeast Asia is the worst. And in there, buried under a few circles, is Sri Lanka itself. In Sri Lanka, Mahaveli River, Kalani River is the worst, and we have quite a few waterways contributing to the pollution. What happens when this trash reaches the ocean is that they move with the ocean currents. They move to assert and accumulate in certain parts of the ocean, and this is called a garbage patch. There's an Indian Ocean gyre, there's a South Atlantic, there's a North Atlantic, and the biggest one is called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. There's so much trash in this part of the ocean. And when these things move with the currents, they tend to accumulate sometimes in certain parts of the ocean, and they're called trash islands. So this floating trash, in the time that it lasts, that we just discussed a few minutes ago, it can do enormous damage to marine wildlife in many different ways. Either get stuck or some ingested, they eat it. What happens when an animal eats plastic is that their stomachs get packed with plastic and they feel full. They feel like they ate, but their stomachs can't digest the plastic. So what often happens is that these animals end up starving to death. I remember when the first news came out of a whale washed up on shore and they found, this many pounds of plastic trash in its stomach. It was big news. It went viral on social media. It was shocking news. But now it's happening everywhere in the world, and so often that it's becoming normal, something that absolutely should not be a normality. These are just a few handpicked examples, and there's so many of similar incidents happening everywhere in the world. The one thing common about all these incidents is that these mammals are found with a stomach full of plastic. So I want to show you a quick video, and then we can get back into the presentation. Okay. Please tell me if you can't hear the sound.
Do we have the courage to face the realities of our time and allow ourselves to feel deeply enough that it transforms us and our future? Come with me on a journey through the eye of beauty. Across an ocean of grief. And beyond.
Honestly, the most difficult part of this presentation is having to watch this video over and over again. Okay, I'm switching back to presentation. All right. So before we change topic, I can't go without mentioning the current and ongoing disaster in Sri Lanka, with the Express Pearl ship that dumped many tons of oil and nitric acid and all of these tiny plastic pellets into the ocean has created enormous damage to the ecosystem. We are only seeing what's happening above ground, above ocean, but those who dive inside the water describe how bad it is underwater, and it will take years and years for us to repair this damage. These tiny pellets are called NURDOs. They are the raw material for all of the plastic products that are made. So we can talk in a little bit about, as consumers, we all have a little part to play in this incident, because we are the consumers that consume this plastic, and which is why these are brought into the island. And so how can we as individuals make small changes to our lives to make a difference? So clearly this cannot go on. We cannot sustain this planet for new generations to come if we carry on this way. So some of you may be thinking, I dispose my trash responsibly. I always put it in the bin, so I have nothing to do with contributing to pollution. But have you ever really wondered what really happens to our trash, right? Where does it really go after you throw it away? Landfills, garbage dumps. If you are living in Kandy municipal area, the image on the left is Gohagura garbage dump. This is where your trash goes. If you are throwing everything in the same bin without sorting your waste, it's going into the dump. Unfortunately and sadly, this is not just in Sri Lanka, this is all over the world. There is not a single country in the world without a landfill. This is sad. The image on the left is Gohagura garbage dump. The one on the top right is Mitadawala. We had an incident in 2017 where the whole hill collapsed on a couple of houses and killed a few people. So this is an entire hill, a man-made hill of human garbage. I mean, the scar it creates on the earth it's pretty infuriating in a way to see. The one on the bottom right is a landfill in France. It is a little better managed, but there is definitely better solid waste management systems in France, especially in Paris. They have this large building where they take the trash from the Paris municipal area, and they burn it and incinerate it and create energy and then plug it back into the city. But even with that, we as a human race have not despite all the great inventions that we have done, we have not figured this out. We have not figured how to not have landfills. So the problem with these landfills is that the juice of the garbage dump, all these rotting things mixing with inorganic chemical things, produces this highly toxic chemical, this black liquid called leachate. And it's very toxic, and it often tends to seep down through the layers of the ground into the groundwater and any natural waterway nearby. So if there is a well or anything nearby, it is completely unusable. We have a situation now in Sri Lanka where wild elephants are coming and feeding on landfills. And this is now creating a similar situation to the whales, where they are found dead near landfills with stomachs full of plastic. And we all know that this is also a health hazard in spreading diseases. So clearly this is not a solution, and they cannot be called waste management, right? The other thing, if you are not even in municipal areas, oftentimes there is not even a system of garbage collection, right? So if you're living in rural areas, you're left to deal with your own waste. So most often what people do is just pile it up into, one bunch in your backyard and set it fire. The problem with this is that all these burning plastics and chemicals releases extremely toxic gases into the air that we all breathe. So this is no solution either. So to discuss a solution, we need to understand trash. What's trash? What is it? Trash is waste material that we no longer use. Everything that we throw away, everything that we consume will one day become trash. This can be divided into two groups: long-term and single-use. Long-term are things that we use for a longer period of time, like clothing or electronics, accessories, and computers, and all sorts of things. But even those eventually will one day end up as trash somewhere, right? But the biggest problem on Earth right now, the majority of the trash comes from single use. These are things that we use once and then we throw it away. They may last in our hands for maybe a minute, a few minutes, or even a few seconds. But once we throw it away, it lasts for years and years to come. It's kind of ridiculous if you think of it in a way, right? Something so transient is meant to last for so long. All of these things on the left side that you see all have plastic in it, and some form of plastic in it. Even the things like the milk boxes that you think is cardboard are not cardboard, because it's lined with a layer of plastic and is not recyclable because the two materials are mixed. So clearly our convenience comes with a price, right? So I'm going to hand over to Chathurika now, and she will talk about how we as individuals can do small changes to our lives, because most often we tend to think that we have no power, right? What's the point of me changing, one small thing? It's not going to change the world. But that's not the case. We actually can make a difference. Small changes accumulated over time can have big positive impact. Chathurika, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dinithi. So yeah, like Dinithi mentioned, so now we've seen what the problem is. So in our presentations, we always try to show you all what can we do about this, qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire, right? Because it can happen at different levels. Like sometimes it can come from the government level, or then there are corporations, or then there's us, you and I as individuals. So let's see what we can do at an individual level. And be aware of it, and then make these small changes in our lives. So the main thing, I think, is when we are disposing of garbage that Dinithi has been talking about previously, we need to, first of all, put it in the correct place, not just litter everywhere, all over the road or wherever, but dispose responsibly, put it in a bin. That's number one. But then when you're putting garbage into a bin, you need to remember to put it in the correct bin. Right, so but that's where waste sorting comes in, because there are different types of garbage, right? So even in this, then the first step would be because most of our garbage is actually something that can be useful for us. You know, it's not, everything is not just something that you throw away and just forget about it, but a very big portion, or very like even like a 70% or a big percentage of our garbage can be made into what is called compost. So I don't know how many of us actually try to do this, but it's not difficult. So I've actually mentioned the contact number and the price of these compost bins that you can purchase from the Kandy Municipal Council, if whoever is in the municipal council areas. So they will actually deliver this to your place. It's made out of concrete. So what we need to remember is to separate these kinds of garbage, the ones that can be turned into compost, the organic material, and the rest, which cannot. The synthetic matter needs to go into a separate bin. Right? So there are different ways of creating these compost bins. You can get the concrete ones, or you can just build something like on the right-hand top. There's a one that you can just create out of like just sticks. What you must remember when you're doing these compost bins is to layer it properly, like on the photo on the left-hand top, so that it will actually do the process correctly. And at the bottom on the left-hand side, you can see this liquid. Some people collect that as well. So this is a very useful, the liquid that comes out of the compost bin can be very useful for your gardening. It's called like compost tea, or it's almost like liquid gold. So that's a very useful thing. So make use of your garbage, turn it into something useful, right? And but unfortunately, not everything can be turned into compost, right? So that's only the organic matter. There are other items which we cannot, which will not biodegrade. So what can be done with these remaining items in your garbage? So that is where the 3 R's come in. Everyone, we talk about this, right? So reduce, reuse, and recycle. So these are 3 things that come next after you sort your garbage into the organic and non-organic, or right? So when it comes to recycling, there are several types of materials. So you need to again remember to sort them properly. So this is done mainly in the municipal council areas. I think they collect them properly on the correct days, on the correct bins. So plastics, glass, all these different materials. Electronic waste is something like Dinithi mentioned that we found these in the rivers as well. So it's a shame that these are not really properly put back into the cycle, into the system, and made use of without just throwing them away once they stop working. So we need to try to remember that and put these items back into that cycle by recycling these, right? And we talk of plastics. So I think most of us have an idea, that a general idea, that this is made out of petroleum that we take out of the ground, and then it's made through a very chemical process. But then what we may not realize is that there are different types of plastics. So that's what we have mentioned at the bottom of that picture. So the types 1 and 2, the high density plastics, right? PET, HDPE. So these are the ones that could eventually be recycled. But some of the others, like, you know, the single-use polythene or plastic bags, things like that, or rigiform straws. So things like this, you cannot recycle at all. So what do you do about these then, right? So it's only the high density plastics. And so this is a list that I once got from the Kandy Municipal Council. They have a collection center. So there's, we can turn our waste into money in this when you're recycling, actually. So it's not that you're just being eco-friendly, but you can do something, you know, for yourself as well. You make some money out of it. And the picture on the right-hand top, these are the pellets. This is at the Guhagoda Garbage Collection Center. So there they turn these high-density plastics into these plastic pellets. Right, so this is what you can turn back into plastic eventually through recycling. So this is something we should try to do, to not just throw away items, but try to get them back into the system. And so these are some ideas that we can use when we are, you know, at home, in your offices, at schools, at the Alliance. I mean, people can think always when you're throwing away things, remember to put these into different bins. And these are some options, easier ways of doing it. So you separate, like what I do is I have old cardboard boxes that I've separated. So then you're reusing the cardboard box as well, right? So you have these in your separate rooms, and you keep separating the garbage accordingly, right? And so unfortunately, so the first step we talked about the organic matter that can be useful. And then you have the ones that can be recycled, but then there are other items that cannot be recycled either. So what do we do about these ones, right? So when you go shopping, so the best option for these items is you try to reduce these or even refuse as much as possible. So we'll just look at some examples of how can we do this as individuals. So the most famous example is the polythene bag. We all talk about it. We talk about banning it and, you know, from the government levels. But the simplest thing that you and I can do is just refuse it or reduce it at least, and take your own bags when you go shopping. So I think that's something I mean, it's a bit difficult at first, but we try to work on it and just remind ourselves each time we go shopping and, you know, try to take our reusable bags with us. And a problem that I came across initially when I, you know, thought of, you know, reducing my bags was vegetables and fruits, things like that. Because when you go to a supermarket, they will put them all in separate bags. If you buy 10 types of vegetables, you end up with 10 bags. So then, but if you insist and tell them, they will put it into one big reusable bag if you tell them that that's what you're trying to do here, right? So it's a conscious effort that we need to make when we are shopping as well. And next, so this is if you're taking your lunch to school or to office, or, you know, then always avoid the lunch sheets. You can take a lunch box with you wherever you're going. The water bottle. So I feel that most of the time we are just paying money for the plastic bottle instead, you know, not for the water. So why should you waste money on that? Take a reusable water bottle. There may be options, places where you may be able to refill them. So whenever possible, I think it's a good idea to do that instead of using single-use plastic bottles. And when we're organizing events, parties, things like that, always try to avoid single-use cutlery, plates, cups, things like that, and always go for reusable ones, glass, ceramic, things like that, right? And when, again, for events, the decorations, so a lot of these are plastic, right? You have plastic or the glitter, things like these that will not be recycled, or they will just end up there in a dump. So always go for eco-friendly options, biodegradable, made out of paper, or even leaves from the, you know, trees, things like that. So always try to think of options which are more eco-friendly. And yeah, the plastic straw is again something that we all talk about quite a lot. So which cannot be recycled. The best option here would be to just refuse the straw when you're ordering a drink. If you're at a restaurant, just drink it out of the glass. Or there are new options available nowadays. You can use steel straws or bamboo straws that can be reused. So there are several options that so up to you to make that choice. And yeah, and when talking about reusing, there are different ways that you can reuse. You can repair old things without just simply throwing them away once they're broken, or, you know, the simple small things break. And repurposing, so you use it for some other new purpose, you change that, or you can upcycle again, right? So you give it a new look and it becomes something totally different, right? So so these are, we thought of putting together photos of things that we ourselves have tried. So I have to confess that I haven't been doing this since I was like a child or in school or anything. This was quite a recent thing for me as well. So I have only started doing this within the last few years, and I'm still finding it difficult in certain things, but I just keep trying. So I think that's what we all need to do, even imperfectly, but we're trying, making an effort. So I mentioned the compost bin earlier as well. So I do my composting at home. And so that I cut down a lot of the organic waste that I would give to the municipality. And then I use it for my gardening. And even in the garden, I used to buy plastic pots, but I don't do that anymore. I go for clay pots, which are more eco-friendly, and, you know, they will biodegrade at some point. So you have a photo of that. And then in the household, for cleaning, you know, the brushes, brooms, things like that, sponges, things like that, what we use, I always now consciously make an effort to buy things that are more eco-friendly, made out of natural fiber like wood or things like that will biodegrade eventually, so not plastic. And when it comes to shopping, so I have right on the left-hand side on the top, there are several different types of bags that I take. So if it's like for vegetables, fruits, I have separate bags. If I'm buying grains like dal or rice, I would have something separate. And even when I'm buying clothes, I've cut down on buying clothes actually as an effort. But if I do buy, I would take I would have a separate bag for that also, without ending up with so many bags, bringing them home. And when you're bulk buying, again, like things like flour, sugar, there are places where you can buy them packaged in paper instead of polythene bags. Takeaway food, you can take your own containers. I have tried that at a few places and it works. So you can try it out. I mean, it may not work everywhere, but there are places that are accommodating. And the lunchbox I mentioned earlier, the straws, when I have a king coconut when I'm on a trip or something, I always say no straw, please. And yeah, bottles. So I always take my water bottle, a reusable mug or a cup whenever I go on a trip, or just even to the shops. If I go, I'll take my bottle with me. And that big bottle with the pump kind of a thing, that's something, so we have a group where we go on trips. So we always make sure to take this big bottle with the water pump. So nobody will buy single-use plastic water bottles during the trip. People can refill using this. So they all bring their own bottles and refill. So no plastic bottles during the trips. And the money picture with the monies, that's once I did some recycling, I gave to a center in here at Kandy Municipal Council. So you can make money out of it. So that's a good incentive always. So it's not just eco-friendly, but it's good for your pocket as well. And just next to that, so hygiene, so reusable sanitary pads. So that's maybe not something that that everyone tries at, but I have tried it and it works for me. And I've also heard that now we have biodegradable options. There's a cup, so different types of options, so which you can try and see whatever works, because the normal sanitary pads, you can't do anything. I mean, they will not degrade at all. And you're just adding, it's made out of plastic. And the photo on the left-hand corner, that's, I think this is a traditional thing that has gone out a bit nowadays. But if something breaks, we used to get someone to come and fix them, like things like chairs. But I think we really need to get back to that without just going and buying something new always. Try to continue and see how we can, reuse, repair, and put it back into the system. Right. Thank you. Over to Dinithi. I think she also has some of her changes to share with us.
Okay, so this is my slide. Again, because I'm in a different place in the world, my solutions to the same problems are different. And that's what makes it most interesting. It's like this kind of math puzzle almost, where you figure out, okay, what is available here? What can I do? So let's start with compost. We compost all the kitchen waste. There's no, municipality provided compost bin here. So we made our own with just chicken mesh, just double the layers, made it into a cylinder, put it in the garden, and it works great. Moving down, veggie bags and shopping bags. There are the large cloth bags to put everything, and also these small mesh cloth bags that I take around to put all the vegetables in them. Sometimes here in supermarkets, they tend to wrap individual vegetables with plastic. So I like to go to the smaller farmers markets and just get my little produce bags filled with vegetables and avoid plastic in any time I can. Moving left, shampoo, conditioner, body soap. It took me a while to figure this one out because they are not readily available everywhere. They are all in solid bars, usually wrapped in paper. So no plastic bottles to throw away here. So moving up, moisturizer. I have not purchased a normal moisturizer in, I don't know, I can't remember the last time I did it. I just use olive oil and coconut oil, whatever's in the kitchen. And if it's too thick, sometimes I mix in a little bit of lemon, but it works great on the skin. No complaint there. So moving up, reuse jars, just bottles that come with jam or any other thing. I reuse for spice bottles. Clothes, this is a big one for me. I used to love shopping and I did it way too often, way too much. Now I have reduced the amount of shopping I do. And if I do go shopping every once in a while, not very often, I tend to buy organic material like cotton or wool or anything like that. or sometimes even secondhand, because any other synthetic material like polyester, nylon, acrylic, or they contain plastic fiber. So every time we wash these clothes, they release microplastics into the waterways. So I have stopped that. Going all the way to the right, this is a large yogurt tub. I have stopped buying the small yogurt cups. So I'm reducing as much as I can, and this large tub is high density polyethylene, is usually recyclable. So it's not foolproof, not completely eliminating, but I'm reducing as much as I can. Over here, so mom and baby hygiene. I am a mom. I have a daughter of a 2-year-old, and figuring out the diaper issue was a big solution, a big problem in the beginning, because a baby can go through 3,000 diapers per year. That's a lot of waste to go to the landfill, right? So my daughter uses 6 diapers, reusable, and we have never had to buy anything. The same with the sanitary pads. Once the great thing about this is they're not readily available, but once you figure out, and there's so many types available, once you figure out what works for you, and once you get it, that's all. You will never have to go shopping for these things ever again. If you go down here, kids' toys, I usually try to get wooden kids' toys. But if there's some plastic involved, most often I buy secondhand. Wooden replacements for toothbrush, razor, and straws. Straws are usually for my daughter. I usually refuse them altogether. Scrubs, this thing is called loofah. It comes from a vegetable. I don't know, in Sinhala we call it vatakolu. I'm not sure what it's called in English or French, but I cut it up and use it as body scrub, kitchen sponge, and anything that needs to be scrubbed. The broom. I love the brooms in Sri Lanka, the wooden brooms, but it's just not available here. There is still some plastic in the handle on this one, but that's the best I can do here. There's also decoration. I never use any plastic decorations or balloons or anything. I try to do, be creative with paper or cardboard. Cotton swabs, I don't buy the ones with the little plastic stick. It's always either paper or wood. Last thing I want to talk about is choices. So when we go shopping and you see an aisle with multiple choices for the same product, if you can see in this image, the top shelf, this one is wrapped in plastic. So if I have a choice, even if it's a little sticker in plastic, I always tend to choose the one without. And that's something I am consciously doing, that again, like Chathurika said, we didn't just, we were not always like this. We transitioned ourselves, and it took some time, and we're still not perfect. But these small changes can make a huge difference, and all it takes is just will, and that's it. So I want to show a few examples from around the world of people and groups making small changes and having big positive impact. Zero waste minimalists and pollution activists. These are individuals trying to create awareness of reducing waste or stopping pollution. There's a few examples here. Bea Johnson is actually a French born. She's currently living in California, but she is a zero waste activist. She lives a zero waste lifestyle along with her husband and 2 kids. So a family of 4. The jar that she's holding up in her hand is the trash that 1 year, her whole family produced in 1 year. So she has written a book called Zero Waste Home and inspired thousands of people and opening up zero waste shops. She's incredible. She has lots of TED Talks. I really recommend listening to those. Rob Greenfield here on the left is American. He strapped his own trash to his own body, cleaned of course, and walked around the city to show people how much one person can consume and to show how much of a burden we are on this planet. So he's often called the trash man. There's also 2 Sri Lankan activists here. Kanchana Veerakoon is a zero waste minimalist. Savara Veerasinghe is a pollution activist, but also she's an entrepreneur. She, in her company, produces biodegradable packaging, like takeaway boxes that we often, they are not recyclable, although not all plastics are recyclable. So she tries to convince businesses to convert to more sustainable packaging. Gary Benchagib here in Indonesia, this is a great story because he made a boat out of plastic bottles and paddled down the incredibly dirty Citarum River, the picture I showed in the beginning, to create awareness on how polluted the river is. And he created a documentary, published it, and this got the attention of so many people, including the president. So the beautiful part of the story is that the president then teamed up with him and initiated a cleanup of the river. So some beautiful examples. There's also changes happening in the market. There are lots of zero waste shops happening around the world. This was a new concept a few years ago, but not anymore. You can take your own containers, your own bottles, and fill up whatever you want. There is zero waste produced whatsoever. There's lots of secondhand shops opening up. In Sri Lanka, we have, not everywhere yet, but Unilever has produced this refill station that we can take our jars and fill whatever product we want. And there is also zero trash generated. The thing we can learn from these examples is that most often when we think that individuals are powerless, this is the solution. Governments and corporations react to the public, right? By being aware and making small differences, we are telling them, we are communicating to them that we are telling them, you need to do better. We know the problem and you need to do better to come up with a solution. So individuals do have the power. In France, France is leading the way in banning all single-use plastics by 2040. This is a big process. Companies will take time to transition into this. And also France, Paris is the capital of fashion, right? But oftentimes we know that brands tend to burn new clothes just to maintain prices and value. So France bans clothing stores from throwing away or incinerating unsold clothing, regardless of its price or origin. Instead, retailers would have to donate unsold textiles and clothing to recycling organizations, for charities, for reuse. Another step is by 2023, France plans to ban any incineration or destroying of unwanted unsold goods. So it's a great step. This is a great example. Precisely, I don't know if I'm saying it right. But these are secondhand shops. It seems like they started small a few years ago, but now it's all over the place. You can go to buy secondhand items, but you can also go there to repair certain things. So you can bring back something old that is repaired. They're also trying to create awareness and little activities to make awareness on how to live an environmental friendly lifestyle. I wish that we had this in Sri Lanka. I really, really wish. And maybe some of you listening today, maybe we can start something like this. I don't know. It's a great, great example. This is a great example also. This one is from Paris Canal Saint-Martin. One of the canals leading to the River Seine. It was incredibly dirty, and I think they did a cleanup in 2017. The government has been planning this for a while, and eventually they literally drained the entire canal down to nothing and cleaned the whole thing up. I mean, look, you can see how there's a scooter in there. And there were so many bicycles, not just one. There were more pictures that I haven't put here, but if you Google this, yeah, there are so many bicycles and so many things in this canal. And what's impressive is that they clean, now it is clean, so clean that people can swim in it. And if you think about it, Paris is a city of more than 2 million people, and a canal that runs through the river to be clean enough to swim in is an impressive accomplishment. And if you think about the canals in Colombo, I wish they did this, because we know how dark and black and lifeless they are, right? They absolutely no fish or nothing can live in them. They are so toxic. Lots of toxic runoff from factories and commercial establishments. So this is a great achievement, great example. This is an example from India. This is a beach that used to be so polluted. And one man, just one day, started cleaning up by himself. And then other people saw him and joined him. And then eventually it grew into a large group, and they cleaned the entire beach. The great thing is that the turtles that did lay eggs on this beach for a long time, for decades, returned to the beach to breed again. So it's a beautiful example of how nature can regenerate. It's not all dead and gone. If we give a little help, nature can and will regenerate. These are some of the examples of cleanups happening around the world. This is an ocean cleanup right now in the middle of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, trying to scoop up any plastics that they can and trying to make a difference. These are interceptors in the middle of rivers, trying to stop trash from flowing into the ocean and creating more damage. So there are things happening. It's just that we cannot expect as individuals to keep living the life that we are living right now and expect someone else to do something about it, right? So there are so many awareness programs happening around the world with little school children learning to sort their waste, learning to refuse the straw, learning about how plastic impacts the planet, and all sorts of great things. So before I conclude, I just want to say that if you compare humans to other animals, the footprint that we leave behind is far too destructive than any other animal on this planet, and where they only leave footprints and they're decomposing bodies behind, and that's not the case for us, right? So we cannot expect to keep living this comfortable life the way we are living right now and expect that the next generations that come after us will be able to enjoy the same things that we did when we were young. And that needs to change. And that's why we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So we need to give it to them, we owe it to them. So finally, I want to say that of all these things you can do, of all the small choices, you have the power to make a difference. And it's just a matter of will. Reducing is the first one. Recycling is the last option. And why? Because plastic is not endlessly recyclable, right? So we need to assume that even the recyclable plastic someday will end up in the landfill. So keeping that in mind, reducing, refusing, and doing whatever we can to make this world a better place is what we need to do as individuals. So do something. Thank you.
Dinithi and Chathurika, thank you so much. Thank you for including French initiatives and French words, but most of all, I am blown away by how effective your presentation is, how positive it is. I feel like doing things now, acting. So thank you very much. It's really inspiring and effective. And I have, let's go into questions, if you agree now. And I have an example, actually, already in the questions of how effective your presentation is. So this is the same person asking a first question, which is, what is lesser evil? Burn or throw to end up in sea, killing animals. Given there is no other viable choice, la 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 la. And you know, your presentation goes on full of examples and practical things to do. And the same person has another question. Where and on what days does KMC collect the recyclables? Can we take it there? Do they deal with it correctly? This is like the perfect example to me. It's like, okay, let's go into action. Let's do it. So this is, you know, the first question, if you can take it. And all of you, please do feel free to include questions in the comments or just to speak out.
First one is a tough one. No, I mean, we always have to bargain with things, right? So I would say none of them. Reduce. So if because you have the option to do so, so just reduce. But throwing away into the sea is absolutely, no, not a solution at all. So burning, I don't know, burning may be less damaging for other species, but I wouldn't vote on any of those. I would say just reduce, always reduce.
At least maybe the incinerators. I don't know if that's, I mean, if as a last resort, I mean, at least you're using it for another, I mean, as energy, or I don't know.
Yeah, if your country has the solid waste management with incinerator, like Paris does, right? Paris has a huge building where they take the trash and incinerate it and produce into garbage. In this case, all of the toxic fumes that come out, they regulate, they purify before they let it out. So that is a little better, but the downside is that it discourages people from recycling. In an ideal world, so right now what we are doing, extracting, using, disposing, right? In a perfect world, we should extract, use, and plug it back into the system, right? So it's called a circular economy. So that's what we should aim for eventually, and not the linear system. KMC, Chathurika, do you know this one? Collect recyclables.
Yeah, so where and on what days does KMC collect the recyclables? Can we take it there? From the houses, I mean, there's a schedule. So I don't know if you're within the Kandy city limits. So in our area, we've got a calendar. So they have, color coded for certain days. For example, today was orange. That was the polythene and plastic in our area, Saturday. So like that. So they have a schedule, a timetable, a calendar. So the problem, again, we have to acknowledge is that if you're beyond the Kandy city limits, this collection does not happen, so that is a problem that we need to find some solution, unfortunately. So cutting down, like we said, is the best option. But the centers, like I said, there is a collection center at KMC. So that's where, where I used to take sometimes if I had a lot of recyclable materials that I wanted to give them, and then, they give cash back in exchange. So that was near the, I don't know, KCC car park. So there they had a collection center. So they had in that list, I had the types of items they would collect. So these kinds, that the recyclable ones that are valuable, they will accept them, cardboard, paper, different types of metals, bottles, even certain plastics, actually, the high density plastics as well. So there are, and apart from KMC, there are other private collectors as well in different areas who will collect these items. So there is that option of handing over for recycling.
That one slide we showed with the recycling prices, aluminium is one of the highest priced items. So if you have lots of aluminium cans from whatever, that makes some serious money out of that. So don't throw them away, because we often collect from rivers.
Yeah, even the glass bottles we come across during our river cleanups, there are so many glass bottles. But the thing is, if you properly clean them and, then hand them over to these centers, they will definitely buy these,
Yeah.
So there should be a proper process.
Products that are eco-friendly are sometimes hard to find, and sometimes they are treated as luxury items with higher prices. Can you guys give us some examples as to where we can get them for affordable? I really agree. The sad thing is that this kind of being environmental friendly or having these sort of values tend to be looked at as kind of I don't know, posh or higher society values. That shouldn't be the case, right? We are only trying to minimize. So what I found is that often Bea Johnson, the French-born activist, also talks about it, because she said when she started the zero waste lifestyle, her husband was complaining that we are spending more money than before, and she told the husband to look at the bank statements, and they found that they're actually saving a lot. So for me, for example, like the diapers for my child and the hygiene products, they are expensive, but it's a one-time purchase, right? So think about the accumulating cost when you keep buying and buying. So what we sometimes think as expensive, just think of as an investment at one time. and then we don't have to keep buying them. And yes, they are hard to find sometimes. Even here, I don't, at least in the European countries, Spain is not quite up to the green standards yet. So these sort of replacements are hard to find. So you have to do a little research. Like Chathurika for hygiene products, you couldn't get it in Kandy. You had to get it from the good market in Colombo or something. So you have to do a little bit of homework. Yes, it is not going to be available in your supermarket. Maybe it will later. I think the thing for this to happen is that there has to be the market for it, and you create the market for it by changing your habits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of these items may be available online as well. So I don't know if it's not available to directly buy from shops here. So that's another option. Is the KCC collection center still there? I haven't checked, with since the COVID situation. I don't know how that works, but the private places, there should be in different areas. If you need to, we can check and if that's something we can look into. I haven't been in touch recently because since the whole COVID pandemic situation, lockdown.
Is that the KCC collection center still there? You have to check, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I can check. Anyone's interested.
The main reason why all started using plastic in the first place was to stop the deforestation, and it did work for a while, but now it gave a much bigger problem. True. Now we will go back to paper and other materials, which will eventually go back to deforestation trails. So what is the best solution? Again, tricky. Yes, you have to gamble again and pick your battles. Plastic was initially invented for military purposes for the First and Second World War, and once the wars were done, all of a sudden now it's like they didn't know what to do with the factories, right? So what they did was plug it into the consumer stream. So that's how we were introduced to plastic on a mass scale. There are sustainable examples. So bamboo, for example, grows really fast than most trees. So the regrowth of bamboo doesn't cause deforestation. So I think that in time, we just have to keep resolving. So some people are creating things from algae, from the sea, all of which take a shorter time to produce. I would still say reduce. And if you have to go for the paper and things like that, it's still better than plastic.
Yeah. Or recycled paper options.
Yeah, I mean, eventually, at least you can reintroduce it to Earth safely, right? Without worrying about it. And plastic is not the case.
You kind of confirm the lesser evil of the two options is to burn, maybe burn at a higher intensity to reduce dangerous fumes. Are there such incinerators for a neighborhood, say under 200,000 rupees or so?
I don't think so, right, Chathurika? I certainly don't advise to burn at all, but I'm just saying, just don't kill other animals. Incinerators, we just don't have. I know that there's one project proposal for Colombo. There's one coming up in Muthurajavilla. I'm not sure about the status of that, but that's only for Colombo. So in Kandy, we still have to deal with this problem, unfortunately. Yeah.
I kind of wanted to challenge our students if they are around. I know that some students from the students committee are there, and because in the coming years there will be a Green Alliances project. At least people are starting to think about it, and so yeah, I thought let's raise some ideas. And even maybe Chathurika and Dinithi, if you have ideas for the French Alliance, that would be welcome as well. If anything comes to mind, yeah.
That's a great idea. I mean, if this is not a one-time thing, and if you can actually continue the work, you know, make small changes in Alliance Française, have
Such as
some
what?
separation of waste. We actually have kind of made a guidebook for schools, and I can send it to you with a few examples, things
Yes,
you can do. Sometimes you can make competitions and, you know, like make people aware. But when you see the same a message repeated and people do something about it, it tends to sink in, right? Like as humans, our minds and our brains are made to recognize patterns. So even though we forget things in the beginning, once we do it a few times, we automatically program ourselves to act in a certain way. And that's what happened with me and Chathurika. Like it's hard in the beginning, but then you get used to it, and then it feels great because it's, you know, you're not sending things to the landfill, or at least less. So yeah. In recycling, it will eventually give out emission. Very rare to find technology. So what would be the best solution on recycling process? I don't understand the question here.
Recycling itself contributes to global warming.
Right. Yes.
Factories and.
I mean, that's why we say recycling is a very energy intensive process. So recycling is still the last resort. So don't think about, most people kind of feel better saying, I recycle, you know, but that's honestly the last resort. The first, in terms of plastics, so always reduce.
There's another comment, making beauty products such as hair products, lip balms, lipstick, etc. with natural ingredients, aloe vera, turmeric, etc. at home, and using plastic containers that are trash to store them is also a good idea, right? So I think, Dinithi, you had similar examples in your presentation as well. I mean, making your own.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, sometimes when I tried this, when you try to make your own products, those little ingredients come in plastics, so then you have to resolve that. But I think Sri Lanka is better in that way. You can get all these tiny things from small shops, and you can actually make your own. So in that way, Sri Lanka is better, and I can't do that here. So I think it's a great idea. If you can, yeah, all these zero waste minimalists, they talk about making some things on their own.
I feel I have to say that people who speak French are welcome to express themselves in French.
Yes, please.
Now I'm getting some messages with ideas, but in French. And this
please,
is
feel free to speak in French.
Yes, sure. We can translate. Vas-y, Nadège.
Donc, si j'ai bien compris, la préoccupation autour des technologies pour gérer les pollutions générées par les déchets, donc les décharges, qu'on appelle ici en Europe centres d'enfouissement technique, sont équipés de différentes structures. Par exemple, le fond de la décharge est équipé d'une géomembrane pour que les liquides de la décharge ne pénètrent pas profondément dans le sol. La géomembrane bloque les liquides qui sont récupérés pour être traités dans des stations d'épuration, par exemple. Puis les gaz sont également récupérés et traités à part. Et c'est la même chose pour les incinérateurs. Le problème majeur, c'est le type de filtre à la sortie de l'incinérateur pour que les émissions de fumée soient réduites au maximum.
So quickly, alors laisse-moi traduire vite fait. This is very technical, so I'm not going to translate this very well either. I'm sorry about this, but just to, keep the conversation flowing. Nadej is talking about burial. So rather than burying, She's saying that the key to this process is the filters that are being used. I checked geomembrane and the word is the same in English, so I'm feeling confident there. So please go on, Nadej.
Ok, donc il y a deux choses, hein, Sarah. La première chose, c'est la décharge en elle-même. Donc, effectivement, enterrer des déchets, mais avec tout un équipement pour récolter les liquides et les gaz. Et l'autre option, c'est l'incinération. Et là, il faut absolument que les filtres soient super bons, quoi. Après, la clé fondamentale, c'est effectivement, comme on l'a déjà très bien dit, c'est refuser de consommer de manière responsable. Alors, félicitations pour les présentations.
Merci, Nadej. So just to summarize what you said, the key to burying is the quality of the equipment of the dump. So going back to these filters, for example. And what Nadej said as well is that what you both said in your presentation, which is refuse. The first step is to refuse consumption of, for example, plastics and toxics.
She's right. The image I showed of the landfill in France, it's better managed than the ones in Sri Lanka, because what they do, so in Sri Lanka, the ones we see are hills, right? They pile up on top. In France, it's dug down as a whole and then packed. But they're also putting a layer to collect that leachate, the liquid, and then they treat the liquid and before releasing it to the water. So it's better managed. There is that. It's still a landfill, but it's better managed.
Someone raising their hand. Ah, pardon, vas-y Nadej, termine.
Non, mais c'est bon, je laisse la main à quelqu'un d'autre.
Alors, Patrick Teich.
Oui, bonjour à tous, merci pour les présentations. Juste un petit commentaire, une intervention. Donc, les exemples de vie de tous les jours présentés par les deux présentatrices montrent bien que l'apprentissage est long. Et donc, pour réduire le temps d'apprentissage et améliorer le learning curve, c'est bien aussi de commencer avec l'éducation, les enfants. Et donc, c'est là où l'Alliance française peut aussi apporter quelque chose au process développement durable et réduction et dès le jeune âge avec vos étudiants.
So thank you for this idea. You want to translate it in English?
Yes, I can. So, I started by thanking for the presentation and explaining that life examples presented either in Spain or in Sri Lanka are really nice. And it shows that it took a lot of time for the people to understand this and to build all this information. It doesn't come in 1 week or 2 weeks. It's a life experience. And in order to accelerate the learning curve for others, it's good to start implementing these in schools and maybe in teaching programs as the Alliance Française. So instead of saying like Paul a mangé la pomme, maybe we can start introducing new sentences in the education and in all the process. So start young, and that's how we can do it, educate the kids.
So I think because Sri Lanka is still picking up on this subject, maybe Alliance Française can be the first, like the best example of environmental friendly, waste-free institution.
Noted.
It's definitely achievable.
I think that's why we wanted to start these presentations as well, because we were initially doing the cleanups and then we both were kind of discussing, and we can do the cleanups forever, but then at some point we need to, awareness needs to come in, and we actually started with school kids. So that's where we thought like children need to start and realize and make that change from a young age. Yeah.
I would like to really thank for the presentation. It was really amazing, and I'm really, really inspired. I've started cutting down on polythene bags, and I always used to think, like, when I go to supermarket, like, okay, I can carry a vegetable into a little bag to weigh them. I used to think, like, okay, what do I do with this bag? Like, we have a bag full of polythene bag and we don't know what to do with them. So really, I mean, seeing all these animals suffering and because of our mistakes, it's really heartbreaking. Like, this presentation has really inspired me to, like, cut down on polythene and, like, to do the best I can, and also to tell my friends and family to cut down on polythene and, like, what we can do. And I'm really sure with Sarah, we can do something really big at Allianz, and we can start on maybe using cardboard boxes instead of plastic garbage bags.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
This is being introduced. It made me think of the language teaching, and this relates to what Patrick was saying as well. You know, language books actually have changed. You know, they include different people, different ways of life, and they now, little by little, slowly, but they do include environmental awareness as well. So yeah, this is little by little, it's possible. Everyone is saying thank you. I do not see any more questions. Maybe we can close it there. We've been talking for an hour and a half. Let's see, 1 or 2 minutes. If nobody's shouting.
Thank you so much for inviting us here. It's been great. And
thank you. Thank you so much
discussion.
for this very effective, thought-provoking, and action-oriented presentation. Thanks to everyone as well. Hello. I can see someone wants to say something there. I'm glad we have a child in this presentation. Ivana, thank you so much for coordinating this event.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
This. Thank you.
Have a good evening. Have a good afternoon. And
merci, madame.
Bonjour, monsieur. Hopefully we can talk soon again. Since everyone is willing to keep going. Thank you very much. I learned valuable stuff. Me too. So
thank you.
Yeah, lots of you. Okay, take care. Be green. Thank you so much again, and see you again soon then.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good evening.
Yeah, no.